Alright, so let's talk about formatting. So our printf statement we can do a lot of things with. So let's just make a simple printf. We'll print out the value of x as a double with %f, and I set it equal to approximately pi. Alright, so there's x, 3.14159, and 27 got rounded up to 3. So printf apparently rounds to a certain number of digits. And so we looked a little at this the other day. If I say %10.4, it gives me a total of 10 characters, with 4 of them being after the decimal point. And we looked at if we put a minus sign in the beginning, then it left justifies. So let me give you another trick that can be useful. So we said minus 10.4, which should be left justified, and this is left justified, and there's 4 things after the decimal point. But what about the 10? Did it do anything with that? Or did it ignore it? As far as we can tell, it looks like it kind of ignored it. It just left justified, put 4 things after the decimal point. But it's possible it printed a bunch of spaces after that 6, and we can't see them because spaces don't show up, right? So here's a general trick. For example, I'm just printing an angle bracket before I say x equals, and I'm printing an angle bracket before I print the new line. Right? There's nothing magic about angle brackets. I use parentheses, I could use squiggly lines, right? But my goal here is I want to print out my x with this negative 10.4f format, and then I want to print some character that I can definitely see. And if there's a bunch of white space after that 6, I should see that white space before I get to the angle bracket. So I'm delimiting my output in a way to make it easier for me to see what's going on. And if I do that, now I can see very clearly, yes, there's a total of 10 characters being used. 3.1416, and then there's 4 extra characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, right here. And that's something that can be useful sometimes. Alright, so if we wanted to have 2 digits after the decimal point, percent something 0.2, right, that gives us our rounding. And we can left justify or right justify. So this gives us an idea for how we can format our output like this. Right, if we use something more than just %f, we put some modifiers in front of it, we can limit the number of digits, and we can also control how wide the output is. So when I print this, let's print out, we're going to have 2 characters after the decimal point. We're going to have a decimal point, that's 3 characters. Probably not going to get more than the $9,999 in this convenience store. So we could leave another 4 characters for the number of dollars. So that sounds like 8 characters we need. So let's make these 8.2 for the cost and the tax and the total cost. So how many energy drinks do we want? We'll do 10 of them. And so the cost, oh, I missed one. I missed this one, so these cost percent 8.2F. Alright, so 10 energy drinks, and now it looks like we're dealing with like dollars and cents. I suppose I want to line up my 3 lines there on the bottom so it actually looks like, you know, 3 rows of numbers that are being added together. Well, you got to do a little bit of counting. You can do this on graph paper, or you can try to just sort of fake it. Looks like my second line has to get moved over 1 spot, and my first line has to get moved over 2 spots, right? So let's see if we can just get lucky. Let's just put in 2 spaces there and 1 space there. And, you know, kind of looks like they're lined up now in my code, because printf is the same, parentheses quote is the same, and now I'm actually seeing what's going to be output starting from here. And those are lined up. And looks like this one's lined up also. So let's try that. 10 energy drinks. Hey, there's a nice looking receipt. Now making, yeah.
Could you also just change the 8 to like a 10 or?
Yeah, you could make the 8 anything you wanted, basically. By making it an 8, you know, I can handle 3,000 energy drinks fine. But if I handle 30,000, then, well, that one seems to work too. If I do that one, then things get kind of weird. Right, but yeah, you can make it whatever seems reasonable. Now I'm making life a little hard on myself because my dollar signs are lined up, but we don't normally write numbers like that. We normally put the dollar sign right next to the leftmost digit, right? Well, don't have to have dollar signs in program 2, so I'm making life harder. But just print out the numbers, and so we don't have to worry about that little detail. But if we wanted those dollar signs to come out right next to the leftmost digit, could we do that? Yeah, we could do that. It would take a little more work, but it's doable. But here's the easiest solution. Just get rid of them. All right, so questions on this? Let me shift gears for a moment and talk about something else that may have happened to you. If not, it will happen to you eventually, which is you try to edit your program and you get this kind of thing popping up. Has anybody seen this happen yet? This tends to happen if, for example, you're editing a file and you go away, and while you're away, the server disconnects. That's the most common cause of this. And then you come back and you log in and you start trying to edit your file, and when you say VI file name, you get this kind of overwhelming message popping up. Okay, here's what's happening. In my case, I'm already editing my file in one window over here, and now I'm trying to edit it in another window. Okay, but if I was editing this file and then my server disconnected and I lost my PuTTY connection, the system still thinks this file is being edited. So when I log back in and I say VI file, it says, hey, this file is already being edited. Okay, the way that it knows this file is being edited is because when you start editing a file with VI, it creates a temporary file, in this case called .goto.c.swap, SWP. And when I say edit this file, it looks for that temporary file, and if it finds it, it says somebody's already editing this. Okay, if that's a bogus message, if you're not in fact editing it somewhere else because you got disconnected, right, you have options for what you can do. But if you don't exercise one of these options, right, then, you know, every time that you go to edit this file, you're going to get the same scary message, right? So here's what I suggest. If you get this message, :Q, quit the editor first, okay? And take a look at your file as it exists. So, you know, something like more goto.c. Take a look at your code. Is this the code that you want? Okay. And it may be that you typed a bunch of changes in your code and you don't see them here. Okay, you may have lost all these changes that you made. Hopefully when you're using VI, you're writing your file out pretty frequently, right? It's like a nervous thing programmers do while they're thinking. They just say :W just to write the file, or Control-S if you're in Notepad or something. So if you look here and this file looks fine, this is the file that you're happy with, right? But the problem is that when you VI, you get this error message. Here's what you can do. Take this file here, .goto.c.swap, and delete it. Okay? Don't delete goto.c or whatever your program is. That's your program. Don't delete that. But quit out of here and remove .goto.c.swap. And now when you try to edit, you're fine. Okay, you get this message, you say :Q, you check your file and you say, oh, that doesn't have any of my changes in it, right? It's possible that those changes can be recovered. Okay, so go in and VI your program, and it says down here at the bottom, another program may be editing the same file. An edit session for this file crashed. In this case, use :recover or vim-r goto.c to recover the changes. I've never tried this. Let's try it. So I'm over here and I'm editing. Okay, so I've invented, you know, the next Google in my code while I was doing program 2, and I've got all this great code sitting in here. Okay, and then something happens, and my VI session goes away. Okay, and now I come in here and I try to VI, and it says, oh, found a swap file. Okay, so I'm going to say :quit. And I'm going to look at my file. It does not have my code changes in it. I lost my precious code, right? So you can try, as a last-ditch effort, using this VI-R option. Okay? Before you do that, this is pretty close to your code, right? Make a copy of this. Okay? Anytime you think something's going on, you think you've lost some changes to your code, something like that, start by making a copy of where you are, right? So this is goto.c. I'm going to copy goto.c, goto.good.c. Just make a new copy of it somewhere else, right? And now if I try to recover my changes and something goes wrong, I've still got goto.good.c. Okay, so let's try vi-r goto.c. Recovery completed. You should check if everything is okay. I look in there, hey, it recovered my code that I had typed but hadn't saved. Okay, so now I look at this code, I confirm, yep, this is the code I want. Let's go ahead and write that out. Let's quit. Okay, next time I try to edit, I'm going to get that message. This time I look at my code's fine. I'm just going to remove that swap file. And now when I VI, back to where I should be with my changes intact. Okay. The easiest way to avoid any of this is don't leave your VI sessions open. Right? If you're leaving, :WQ, save your code, exit the editor. Right? If you leave yourself in VI, you go off to get a cup of coffee and your cat hops on your keyboard, forget it, your code's munged. Right? Because VI, we used to play this game when I was in school, which was go into VI and just type your name and see what happens. So here's an ICHOLAS, Macias, right? So that's not too bad because I hit an I in the beginning. But, you know, if you just kind of randomly hit things on the keyboard, you know, who knows what's going to happen, because everything is a command, right? If you hit a Shift J, it starts putting your lines together and weird things like that. So don't leave your editor sessions open in general, right? When you're sitting there working on it, that's great. When you walk away, close it out first, and that minimizes the chance of getting those swap files. Okay, how many people here have laptops that they can use to connect to the CTEC server? Put your hands up so I can actually get a count. Okay, good number of people. So here's what I'd like to do. Let's play around with this. And if you don't have a laptop, I'd like you to work in groups, okay? Groups of 2 people. And if you don't have a laptop, find someone who has a laptop who's willing to share with you. And if we've got an odd number of people, we can have a group with 3 people. It doesn't have to be exact. But let's play around with trying to write the beginning of this code. And I'm going to walk around and see what you're doing, but you can also ask questions. And let's just iterate on this for like 15 minutes and see what we come up with. And then we'll go from there. Does that make sense? Hold on a second. I'm gonna stop this recording. All right, so let's talk about some of this stuff. So first of all, someone just asked me about this. So since we figured it out, let me show you this. If you're on the CTEC server and you say VI without a file name, it gives you this splash screen, right? And one of the things it says here is you can say type :help, enter for online help. I've never tried that before, so I learned something new. :help with an enter, and it gives you some basic help information. So HJKL is how you can move around with the keys, and it talks about how to quit, how to get out of this window, and so on. And you can, you know, hit the enter key or the down arrow to go down and see other commands in here. And if you keep doing this, it tells you that there's other things you can find: quick ref, tutor, copying, editing efficiently, how to tune the editor. And then like general subject, it says, for example, intro.txt is a quick introduction. Index.txt is alphabetical index of all commands. So you can look at any of these if you want, where you say :help space and then type in the name of one of these files. So so she was looking at the index. So if you say :help index.txt, this shows you an index of all the commands in VI. So, and this is just a table of contents. So the first section is for insert mode, the second is for normal mode. So insert mode, here's some of the things you can do, which we don't usually talk about. Normal mode, so Control-A adds adder before the cursor, Control-D scrolls down a number of lines, and so on and so forth. So there's online help built in, right? And there's tons of commands available inside VI. Each of these is a separate command, right? And most of us know, you know, a tiny little piece of these. Yeah, there are helps for the help text, actually. So that's like if you do help intro.txt, just kind of a gentler introduction to what VI is. And almost always we're actually using VIM, which is an improved version of VI, but functionally, if you know VI, you can use VIM exactly the same. If you know VIM, you may not be able to use old VI, but old VI you don't find very often. So there's a gentle introduction with 886 lines. So that's available. All right, so P2. So looked like a lot of people got really far on this. So any questions or comments first of all? Otherwise, let's start putting this together as a class and get at least the beginnings of this on the display here. But questions, comments, observations?
You can put \n wherever you want.
You can put \n wherever you want. If you want to double space a line, just put 2 \n's at the end of it instead of 1. And the first one says go down to a new line, and the second one says go down to a new line again. If you put 3 \n's, you'll triple space that line. So you can put space in there vertically. So something that I always tell programming students when writing code, here's what you're after, right? This is program 2 assignment. This is what you're trying to do. That's not necessarily the first thing that you should be trying to write though, right? You can usually creep up on the final version of a program in steps. For example, this program says that we should, find out how many of these things you're getting and then calculate the cost and the tax and print out this table. Well, one way to start this is say, I'm just going to deal with oranges, right? Oranges are just one thing. There's no tax to worry about. Let's just ask how many pounds of oranges you have, calculate the cost, print that out, right? And that's kind of what we did in the beginning with energy drinks without tax. And then we added a tax component to that. And then we might go ahead and we might add a second item. And then we might add the third item. But throughout this, we might be completely ignoring the formatting, just trying to get the numbers to come out right. And then once you've got the numbers coming out, now you start playing around with the printf. What should I put in the percent 6.2 or something like that to nail down the columns and get things to line up. Or maybe you make this work for oranges and you try to get it to come out in a particular column. And you play around with the formatting on the simpler version that only has oranges. And once you know how to do that, now you do the same thing for energy drinks and you do the same thing for yogurt, right? But it's usually not preferable to sit down and write a whole bunch of code and then compile it and run it for the first time after you've written 50 lines of code. It's usually nicer to just write a few lines of code, compile that, run it. One, because if you need to make little corrections in the way that you're developing this, it's easier at the beginning. And two, it's fun to get something that works, right? To actually get something that takes how many pounds of oranges and tells you the cost of it, that's kind of cool. And so getting these little sort of intermediate results along the way makes it more fun to work towards the big thing as opposed to just grinding out code for 10 hours and nothing's working and nothing's happening. It's just really frustrating and it can be discouraging. So I've got the usual start. I threw some comments in the top, right? So program 2, get a number of items from user, calculate cost and tax, add them and show a pretty receipt. That's my one sentence synopsis of what this program does. You may need to, you may be required to do things like put your name in there. If you're in a class where you're doing projects in groups, you may need to list the people that you're doing this project with. You may need to have the date and the course number and the name of the teacher and all this other stuff, right? If you're working in a business setting, you may be required to have, a fixed set of information that says what's your business unit and who's your supervisor, blah, 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 right? But you usually want something in the comments to kind of introduce the code to the reader. And comments are, they're for your benefit. They can be pretty basic things like this. I was writing a system for a government contract. And this was what the start of the program looked like. This is all a comment, right? This is called ASCII art. So you can make pictures with just plain characters, right? And this is a big long comment. I've got my /* up here that starts a comment. And all of this is a comment until I get down to this */ at the end. And what I did was I drew a picture of how my different pieces of data are laid out in memory and how different pieces point to other pieces. It's something called a data structure. So CSE 222 will deal with things like this. But I just put that in my comments, right? And I put an intro comment here. It said the network structures are a bit funky, so we'll do some ASCII art here. And then this was what I referred back to when I went into the code later and wanted to know what was going on. And I was using an algorithm from somebody's dissertation, so there's a reference to the person whose dissertation I used, and so on and so forth, right? So comments usually should be useful, as opposed to the comments I've been writing in this example, where it's just like add my numbers together.
So what is the accepted use of open source stuff and just crediting it where credit's due?
So so for classes, not allowed, right? Generally, most classes you're writing all the code yourself. And if you're working in something like C, for example, you don't have to write the scanf function yourself. That's provided for you, right? When you get to Java, there's lots of big packages that will do the kinds of things that your assignments are asking you to do, and so you would avoid the built-in stuff and do it yourself. But in general, in the wild, right, you're working on a project for yourself or for a contract or whatever, and you need something that reads a JPEG file and gives you some information about it, right? Some kind of image processing thing. Yeah, you might find an open source package that does that. And when you find these things, there's usually a README file, and the README contains, among other things, terms of use, right? And open source, there's different versions of open source. But the basic idea of open source is you can take this stuff and you can use it as you like, okay? Within a few guidelines. So one guideline might be no commercial use. You can use this for research, education, non-profit use, but you can't use it for something you're going to sell. You can have open source that is available for commercial use, okay? A lot of times it says you can use this, but you have to include a reference to the person who created it. So I can take this code, I can put it in mine, but somewhere in there I have to say, you know, this section of code was written by blah, right? Sometimes that's not required either. And there's like 4 parameters like this, and different versions of open source licenses tweak each of those. Usually just check the README. And if you have doubts, usually there's a way to contact the author, and you can contact them. I switched to open source on my stuff about 4 or 5 years ago. And I used to have it all patented and locked down and stuff like that, and now I'm just on the other end. It's like, it's out there, do what you want with it. Don't even have to credit me for it. Because good things happen when like stuff is available. All right, so I got a comment in the beginning about my include statement. I've got my usual int void, int main void, and my opening curly bracket. So what do I put in here next? What did you put in here next? Variable declarations, right? Remember, you can put variable declarations anywhere before you use the variable. But it's usually considered good practice to declare your variables at the top of your function, right? Main is a function. Put your variable declarations at the top so that the person reading your code doesn't have to hunt around and say, where did they declare a number of oranges? Is that an integer? Is it a double? And so on. So let's put in some variables. So what kind of, what names of variables do we need? What type of information do we need to record in this program or work with? So pounds of oranges, number of energy drinks, number of yogurts, The taxon, which? And then cost?
The cost per oranges,
Cost per?
per pound.
Cost per pound of orange. Cost per yogurt. Cost per drink.
How do you declare tax?
Tax rate? Anything else?
I put my cost total, tax total advantage.
Okay, so cost total. Tax total. Grand total. Right, that's those bottom two rows, cost total, tax total, and those get added to be grand total. Anybody have any more? I could think of a few more. Don't have to. Okay, so let's just do energy drinks. Let's subset these. So, and what types of variables did you make these? Integers?
I made everything a double except for amount of yogurts and amount of.
Okay, so you made these integers, everything else doubles. Anybody do anything different? Could you make everything an integer? Could you make everything a double? Yeah. So it's a little bit of a stylistic question, a correctness of code question. If you assume the user is not going to do something weird, like say 2.3 yogurts, right? You can go ahead and make all of these things doubles. Technically, this should be an integer, this should be an integer, right? But even if you do that, if they put in something like 2.3, it's going to make your program act weird. But, okay, so let's make these ints. And let's make these doubles. So let's just play with oranges. So integer, sorry, let's just play with energy drinks. Now you can call these whatever you want, and you can use camel case, you can use snake case, you can ignore that completely, right? It's totally up to you. If I put these on separate lines, it makes it easy to put a comment next to each one. Well, these names are pretty straightforward, and we've talked about this program a lot, so it's pretty clear what these are going to do, but if we were going to be kind of extreme in our comments, assuming the person didn't understand our names, total cost of the drinks without tax, tax on the total cost of the drinks.
Double cost of one drink, you have
How much OG drink costs? Cool. And, you know, you can put spaces in here to line these things up. If you like. Or sometimes people do this. And that can look kind of cool. You want your code to sort of like flow, you know, as you're reading it. You don't want to struggle while you're looking at it. So, you know, whatever works for you, whatever is going to feel good. And you know, coding is creative. It's an artistic process. And you know, your boss at Stuffy Inc. might frown on this, but you know, certainly if I'm your teacher, have fun, be creative. Right? I've had students who put poetry in their comments. I used to put song lyrics in whatever I was listening to. When I felt inspired, I'd throw in some Pink Floyd lyrics or something, and my teachers would wonder what was going on. You know, it's a creative thing, and you don't want to cinch down on that creativity, right? If you can open that up and let it flow, you're going to be more successful in programming. You're going to come up with more interesting code, and you're going to have more fun with it. So, you know, little things like that might help. All right, so we got number of energy drinks. We've got tax on energy drinks. We've got the cost per energy drink. Let's do the tax rate, and let's just hardwire that. And I don't know what our tax rate is because I just pay it. Is that Washington tax? 6.5? Okay, that works. And then final sum of all costs without tax. So final sum of all taxes.
For the tax rate variable, you can't really do 6.5 with the percentage sign.
You can't put a percent in there. C doesn't understand that. Percent's a modulo operator. But it could do 6.5 over 100. And that would work the same. Alright, and grand total is the final amount due. Alright, we got variables declared. What do we do next?
But we asked it how many do they have? How many entries?
What do we do before that? Welcome to, yeah, so lead the user in. Call it something better than My Amazing Store maybe, but welcome to My Amazing Store. Okay, and let's put a couple of new lines at the end of that so that comes out as a header. You know, you can put a line of stars around it, and if you know how to do it, you can make it flash or put it in different colors or things like that. So you can go crazy with that too. All right, so we print out our welcome message, and then we ask them how many energy drinks they want, right? And we're creeping up on this where we're starting just with energy drinks. So we've done this before, but in a slightly different form. So let's do energy drinks. All right, and then what do we scan F? We need to scan F to get an input from the user. Say again? Yeah, so what do we put in the scanf statement? What's the first argument? Yeah, first argument is the format, right? So quote %I, and then ampersand, and then the variable number of drinks. Well, if we also needed the amount of yogurt and the number of oranges, we could do the same thing. We could prompt for those. But we're only doing energy drinks. We have all the information we need. We know how many energy drinks they want. We know what the tax rate is. We didn't set up the cost of one drink, but we can go back and do that. That's just going to be hardwired. In fact, let's just put that up here. So what's the cost of one drink? $1.50. Okay, so what calculations do we have to do here? We know how much a drink costs, we know the tax rate, we know how many drinks you have. What do we want to calculate?
Cost of all drinks equals cost of one drink times that number.
I don't know what a drink is, but I seem to want one. Cost of all drinks is cost of one drink times the number of drinks.
Can you have spaces, a space in between those operands?
And you can have a space,
You can.
right? Some people like to put spaces around the equal sign. Alright, personal style. Alright, what else?
Tax on drinks equals cost of drinks.
Say again?
Tax on drinks,
Okay, tax on drinks.
cost on drinks times tax rate.
Cost of all drinks times the tax rate, that gives us the tax on drinks. Anything else to calculate? Total. So find the totals. Well, the cost total, well, we only have one item. That's the cost of all drinks. So the cost total is just going to be the cost of all drinks. But, you know, if we had done this for oranges and yogurts, then the cost total would be cost of all drinks plus cost of all yogurt plus cost of all oranges. Just add them together. Same thing with taxes. Tax total equals tax on drinks plus tax on yogurt, if we had that. So we only got one item, so that seems a little silly, but that's okay. Alright, one more calculation. Grand total. There you go. So presumably we've calculated everything. Now we have to print it. Well, at this point, you know, I've been writing a lot of code. You've been writing a lot of code. I've been typing a lot of code. I want to see if it works. Right? So I'm not going to worry about formatting. I'm just going to print these things out in some approximate format. I'm not going to worry about the heading because I don't like doing headings. I'm just going to print out the cost of the energy drinks, the tax, the totals, and the grand total. And I'm not going to worry about formatting. So let's print the receipt. I guess I will print a heading. So let's say item, cost, tax. Alright, so I'll print out oranges as our first item, I'll print out the cost, and I'll print out the tax. And I'm just going to fill these in. So the cost of the energy drinks. Now one problem you can get into sometimes if you use these big long variable names is you can actually forget what they're called. was it cost of all drinks or total cost of drinks or total cost of all drinks? So sometimes you can get into trouble like that. But you know, you can jot down notes. I still use a printer when I'm writing code sometimes. But if you have multiple windows, right, you can open up another window and look at a different part of your code. But anyway, we can just go back and look. So the cost of all drinks was just cost of all drinks. And the tax on all drinks was tax on drinks. And then I'll print out a new line. So that's going to put an extra space in there. And then I'm going to print out totals. And then here I'm going to print cost total and tax total. And I'll print out an extra new line. And print out the grand total. Reasonable. Got an error at line 1. So what's wrong with line 1? Well, take a look at what the error said. It said unterminated comment. Say again? Yeah, so I put a space here between the star and the slash, so that's just a part of the comment, and my whole program is one big long comment. Okay, so get rid of that one space. Recompile. Wow, it compiled. Alright, so let's try it. How many drinks would you like? Let's use the example here. How many energy drinks would you like? Let's do 3. So cost is 4.5, tax is 29 cents, total 450 and 29 cents, grand total 479. So your numbers are good. Alright, so we talked about how to get the number of decimal points, right? So again, let's just sort of approximate. So we want 2 things after the decimal point. We want a period, and I don't know, I'll just stick with 4 digits. I'll be optimistic that we might do like $10,000 worth of business. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to do 7.2F. Okay, so what am I about to do here? This is purely bonus material. Okay, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to say /%f. That's going to find the next point in my file where I have a %f. And I know I can use the A command to enter insert mode. So I'm going to say A, and I'm going to say 7.2, and I'm going to hit an escape. Okay, I could do that everywhere that I have a %f, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit the letter N. Inside VI, the letter N says repeat my last search. So the letter N will take me to that %sign. And then I'm going to hit a period. And period says repeat my last command. That puts in a 7.2F. And now I can just go N dot, N dot, N dot. Okay? First few times you do that, you have to think about what those commands are. You have to look them up and try them, and if you mess up, you can, like, you know, make all kinds of weird changes. But once that's ingrained in you, N does the next search, period repeats the last command, it's a huge time saver, right? That's way faster than you're going to do with Notepad or Notepad++ or something like that. That's bonus, right? Either way, we got to the point where we've got some formatting on these. So let's GCC it, and let's run it. And let's do our 3 energy drinks. And now we've got not only 2 digits, but we've got things in columns. right? Well, what's the easiest way to make all of this line up? I'm just going to change my header. Now, I don't know if he wants your output exactly in this format with the exact number of spaces, or if he simply wants things lined up. If he wants it exactly like this, you have to count spaces and figure out where everything should go. But I'm just going to move my header and make things line up like that. So, so how much do I have to move things over by? Well, my C is sitting right here, and it should move over 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to say 5 spots. So 3 drinks, there's my cost. And I'm doing that first because that's going to move over my tax, and now I'm going to do the same thing for tax. How far do I want to move that? Let's say 1, 2, 3, it looks like 4 spots maybe. So I'll put that in, compile it and run it. 3 energy drinks, there's my tax. Does that make sense? So most of you already wrote the code for calculating more than just the drinks. Most of you got 2 or 3 of the items in there and are possibly at the formatting section, right? So use a percent something 0.2f to get 2 digits after the decimal point. Play around with the total size that you want for this real number, right? And that'll move it over left and right depending on how big that first number is. And you know, if my second item is oranges, that's got 7 letters, drinks only has 6. So if I use the exact same code and I say oranges, it's going to come out 1 spot over, right? Assuming you actually had, like, you know, different numbers for oranges. It's not lined up anymore. Well, that's really easy to fix, right? Just take out one of the spaces after the word oranges.
The quantity is huge, that's going to affect the tax.
Yes. So if the quantity is huge, it'll affect the tax. But if the tax, right, it's still going to line up. Right, so the way that I've done this, I'm printing out my tax amount. The last digit is going to come out right after that X in tax. And it's printing out, since I said 7.2, it's printing out a total of 7 characters, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 spaces in the beginning. Up here, it printed out 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 spaces in the beginning. Right, but the spaces I put in before that %f brought me up to this point of my output, and then 7 characters. Printed it out here. Yeah.
So if I started getting lazy and I started just marking stuff like A, B, C, X, Y, Z,
Mm-hmm.
do you think Scott would mark down points if I did label?
I don't know. I'm sure he would at least comment that, you know, it would be helpful to have meaningful variable names. But I don't know if he'd take off points for that or not. Eventually, at some point, though, probably he would. I would, at least. Yeah.
Are we going to get marked down if we don't comment?
I don't know that either. I would at the very least put some comments in the beginning with your name and the assignment on it and such, but I really don't know what his expectations are. I think he's more interested at this point in things like meaningful variable names than necessarily having a comment on every line. What you probably don't want to do is call your variables ABC and have no comments anywhere. That would be a bad combination. Okay. But I mean, if you're calling your variables something like this, this is pretty straightforward code for somebody who knows C to go through and figure out what's going on. So probably be okay. And you can always, like, you know, send questions through Canvas to him, and at least, you know, if you do that and he wanted comments, at least you've got a paper trail saying, you know, I knew I could put comments in, but I decided not to, that kind of thing. So pretty comfortable, you could like do PA2 now? Okay, so my suggestion would be work on this. Remember, P2 is done individually, right, but we're kind of working on it as a class here. But to finish it off, right, work on P2 individually, and bring questions on Thursday, okay, and let's talk about things that have come up.
Is there a quiz on Thursday?
There will be a quiz the last 10 minutes of Thursday's class on basic stuff that we've been talking about. Okay, so Thursday we'll start talking about some looping and some control statements, okay, in addition to continuing with this material. All right, so I'll see you then.